Welcome, fellow seekers of challenge and triumph, to the SufferSooner podcast. Join us on a journey where ordinary souls embark on extraordinary endeavors. From the relentless grind of gravel to the punishing gauntlet that is triathlon, we've tasted our fair share of suffering. So, fellow endurance warriors, let's lace up our shoes, strap on our goggles, and dive headfirst into the challenge, knowing that with every step, stroke, and pedal forward, we grow stronger together. All right, guys, welcome to episode 20, the post Unbound race recap episode, where it's kind of bittersweet. I think Unbound is kind of the signaling of the end of the gravel season for us up here in for the SufferSooner squad, and it's the start of triathlon training going on into the summer and early fall. So we won't be talking about gravel for a couple more weeks until probably September or so. And then, we're going to go ahead and kick it off with talking about Serena's race. She did the 50 miler at Unbound. And just tore it up, man. 14.87 miles per hour. She basically rode it just as fast as me and Danny rode the 200. So she absolutely crushed it. So
Serena,
how was
tell us all about it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know that they compare, but I appreciate the accolades. It is bittersweet for me. I have had some really challenging weeks leading up to Unbound. I'll talk with you all after Smithville, but much like Danny, I got a huge dose of heat that day, and as my doctor later described it, cooked myself from the outside in, and probably should have gone to the hospital. Issues from that, and then looking to Unbound, I just knew that there was no way that I could go out there and be on my bike all day. So I was just so thankful that Unbound allowed me to switch my entry down to the 50 mile just so that I could enjoy the day and be out there. But I really hadn't gotten there to do anything until the Tuesday before Unbound. So I just went up the morning of the race, checked myself in, lined up with a great friend, and off I went. Which was
I think you were
totally
the smart
different
one.
from what you. But yeah, it was really nice to just not have all the pressure, I think, of the race, and I knew that I was going to just try to go out and enjoy the day. I had ridden out there a couple weeks before at Le Grind, so it was something kind of new, and I had some real struggles in the races I had done before. Obviously, Smithville didn't go well, and I really struggled at Le Grind. I don't know if I had some sort of sickness or something else going on, but Unbound was really the first day I had felt like myself on my bike in a really long time, so that felt like it had been so miserable probably all month. But it was very different from the 100 that I had ridden the year before, in that it felt like everybody was out there just to have a good time. There were a lot of older riders who are my very big interact with, some 65 and 67-year-old brothers for a long time. There were a lot of parents and children out there. I rode with a dad and a son for quite a while, and it either felt like people were out there to enjoy the day, or was their very first gravel race. I enjoy having the opportunity to kind of share those first with people. And it was the perfect day to race, in my opinion. It wasn't hot. It was overcast for the first part of the race. It had rained, so it wasn't dusty. But I was also so thankful that there was we had encountered the year before as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it had a really good vibe to it. I mean, we'll talk about this a little bit later on the 200 side, but I mean, what you just described sounds like a really, really good vibe for the gravel race. And yeah, I like how you say that you want to have like a really relaxed and kind of chilled approach to it. But then you go out and just rip off everybody's legs and end up, ranking pretty high in the standings. So I like the humility there, but way to rip everybody's legs off. I mean, sounds like you had a really good day out there.
Well, I feel like I've learned a lot of things this past season. I've learned that while I can ride a really long ways, and I probably could have longer distance, I do really enjoy those shorter distances. I like to be able to go home. I like to be able to ride my bike faster. So that thing that I feel like you two have just pounded into me is that there is real value in riding in a group. Mm-hmm. I'm working so harder if I'm out there just pushing the wind by myself. So for the 10 miles or so, I was really just looking for someone to ride with, someone who didn't think that I was and was willing to kind of work with me. It really took me 8-9 miles to find that first father-son group, and I rode with them for probably 8 or 9 miles after that. But just the ability for me to take a pull and then somebody else to take a pull and be able to rest a little bit really does make the day a little easier ride. So I think that part of the speed came from me just being determined not to be out there by myself. And so I would move up a group and then another group and then another group. And by the time I got to the end, I had kind of found myself by myself. There was this guy sitting on my shoulder, and he probably rode on my wheel for 3 or 4 miles. And I finally looked back and just, hey dude, how's it going there? My name's Serena. Nice to meet you. And he's like, I'm good, all good, and gave me the first, rode my draft, and we eventually caught this third guy who I could tell was struggling. And as I went by him, I said, you might as well just jump on the back, dude. He says, oh, okay, that's so nice of you. I'll rest for a little bit and then I'll pull. And then the first guy looks at him and says, oh, maybe I should take a pull. And I thought, man. He eventually did take a pull, and he pulled for like 3 or 4 minutes, and then he's like, oh, well, I'm going to rest now. So I pulled those dudes all the way into the finish. And then the third guy decided that he was feeling great again and just can't remember what it was called and beat us both. So I was just kind of laughing.
Nice.
That's the worst.
Now I know how Travis feels.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens. You find yourself going along, and then there's a train of dudes behind you, and you're like, okay, is anybody gonna help out so we can continue this? I don't mind doing some work, but you guys also have to give me a little bit of a break. Otherwise, this train will come to a stop. So, yeah, that's a bummer that guy didn't work. Sometimes I find, Serena, you did the nice thing and introduced yourself. I'm not as nice at a race. I will tell somebody to get to the front and start pulling if they want to be a part of this group or not. So,
Travis had to yell at one guy to tell him to quit. He would stop pedaling in the middle of the.
He was having a mechanical or something. There was something rubbing on his brake, and the guy was in the middle of the peloton, and he stopped pedaling, and I basically just screamed at him like, "Don't you ever stop effing pedaling!" And everybody around started looking, because he was basically going to bring, if he slowed down, he would have brought me down, and then that would have been Danny, because Danny was right next to me, another guy right next. Like, he would have brought down the whole peloton that was rolling through. It's like, if you have a mechanical in the middle of a peloton, you keep pedaling and get to the edge, and then get yourself off the side of the road. You don't just stop in the middle of the group. So yeah, I did have to yell at somebody. It was not nice, but I rode with him later. It was fine. We understood each other. So. But
I will say though that I feel like they structure that 50-mile a very nice, pleasant travel experience. Most of the roads are fairly flat. There were a few little punchy climbs kind of in the middle, but I think for old time's sake, they did throw in a mud hole where everybody was off their bike, and you had to walk through more mud. And then again, I'm just so surprised at the number of people who go out there and don't have a way to clean the mud off their bike. So again, I see people with sticks and whatever they can find trying to unclog their bikes. And I think what I learned last year is there's this lovely tool. It's made by Park. It has like a teeth on one end and a brush on the other end. And I was in and out of there. And some dude asked me, he's like, "What do you have in your hand?" I said, "It's a Park tool and you really should get one."
You should have pulled out your Venmo and said, "Here you go. You can use it for."
Yeah, you
for
can
a
have
nominal
this one.
charge."
Yeah, you can have this one. I'll sell it to you. They sell them at Gravel City. Like they were in a bucket right in the front of Gravel City. Like, I mean, that thing, yeah, it saves my life so many times, and it barely weighs anything. So, but well, that's great. I'm happy you had a really great race, Serena. I know Humphreys was not kind to you. It was not kind to any of us. I don't think. I think a lot of us died a slow death out there on that Humphreys course. So I'm happy that you were able to get out there and express some fitness that you've gained and then got in relatively no mechanicals and no issues. So that's great. Are you planning on doing
gravel season being done? Huh? I feel like the gravel season just takes a pause during. Very much looking forward to Big Sugar. One of my favorite races is Bad Astra. Mm-hmm. That one will always be dear to me. So I feel like it's just a pause. And as I someday go back and reflect on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think gravel season is a spring and fall sport. I mean, you could do it in the winter if you live somewhere nice, but since we live in this frozen hellscape, it's we train for marathons in the winter. That's what we do. But no, I do agree with Serena that gravel season now is taking a pause, and now we do, the local tries. We do more road biking. We do more. We start. Serena's training for Ironman Chattanooga. I'm going to try to do really well at some of the local short courses that are around here, and then it's all try season now until we get back into gravel season in September with Bad Astra.
That's right. All right.
But this will always, I think, be important to me in that I feel like I just learned so much about what I want to do and I felt like garbage at many of the races that I ended up with. I'll also be thankful I found myself a full podium this year. I've got a first, a second, and a third. And I just need to be, again, grateful to myself and remember that I feel a whole lot better than I'm giving myself credit for.
Yeah, you've done great. I tell this to Diane all the time that you don't have to be feeling perfect to perform. You just have to perform. That's the thing, right? Like, if you very rarely do we get the chance to feel like totally awesome and perform on the same day. So that's the dream. But most of the time we usually don't feel great. And then we somehow manage to perform at a level that at a high level. So.
Yeah. Anytime you're taking home podiums and you're not feeling good, that's a win. So,
yeah.
And I think I also learned too that I really enjoy the local grassroots races. I don't know that I'll go back to Unbound. If I go out and ride in Emporia again, I'm going to ride the grind for a variety of reasons. Grind, the support there was just so extraordinary. You're not going to find somebody at Unbound Gravel who's going, as you roll to an aid station, who's going to hold your bike for you, and another person who's going to ask to take your trash, and a third person who's going to take your water bottle out of your you. And I just really enjoy the smaller races where people just aren't taking it as seriously, and it just feels, I don't know, more like the spirit of gravel to me.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think, I mean, me and Danny are going to talk about
You'll
this
see
in
me
a
on
little
the
bit.
smaller races.
Yeah, is just that we were trying to talk to people when we were riding, but they just didn't want to talk or work together or communicate or have anything to do with us.
Yeah.
They were just like, who are you and why are you even looking my way? And it's like, dude, we're the only two riders out on this godforsaken road. Like we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I just figured I'd smell bad, so
Yeah,
it's all right.
but I don't know. Maybe I look too fresh for them.
Intimidated by the ginger.
Yep, exactly. Like, what is he doing out in the daytime? No, I'm with you, Serena. I think if I could sum up Unbound, in a couple of words, is that it's very serious. Everybody takes this race very seriously, and that's kind of counterintuitive to the spirit of gravel. Whereas, I mean, out of all of the local races that we do, nobody takes it seriously. I mean, yeah, there's some of us that want to do well, but we really just are the first goal is to have fun. And the second goal is to ride our bikes fast. That's it. That's how I would sum up the local stuff.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's that they
Well,
take
and
the
I think
event
that-
seriously. If they take the event seriously, or if it's they take themselves a little too seriously. Because I mean, you look at some of the interactions like at the elite level, and you could tell those guys were, obviously they're pros, they're elite, whatever. But they were working and they work together. They know how to, but they weren't taking themselves too seriously. I mean, look at Lachlan Burton that won it, and he was out there having a good time. And he said that in his post race. He's like, I just want to go out there and have a good time. And I think that's what people lose because of the hype of Unbound. It's such a big event in terms of the hype and the aura around it that people just take themselves a little too seriously, I think, and they just get lost in the fact that, hey, guess what? You're out there to have a good time. And that's what you really should focus on first. And you'll have a good time by putting out a strong effort. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Serena.
Well, the other thing I notice is if you see at small races, if someone has a mechanical, a lot of times there's someone else standing next to them, helping them in whatever way that they can. And I just didn't see that at Unbound. I mean, he really needed a CO2 cartridge. So I stopped and I handed him one. And he looked at me like I was the 75th person who had rolled by and the first person to offer to help him, which just, again, seems a little different from a lot of the other places we ride where I've seen the whole peloton stop in the spirit of making sure that person's okay and making sure that it's fair, especially if you're up at the front. I've seen that happen. And it just didn't feel like that was the vibe at Unbound. And maybe rightly so. I mean, it is, a lot of people call it the Tour de France of gravel. So if you're going to race that hard, that is the place to do it. But I think, again, what I've learned in this first part of the gravel season is that's just not where I belong and not where I find joy. Well, I can race other races if that's what I decide I want to do.
Yeah, no, I think that was right. Like the only person to ask me when I was fixing my mechanicals was one of the pros that was basically had a huge mechanical and is basically stuck back in kind of my group. He was the only one to ask me if I had anything I needed or everything I needed and if I was doing okay. I didn't realize he was a pro till I passed him for the third time, but he was just out enjoying the day because he had a big mechanical before. I think he double flatted and then he had to patch them and then both his tires and then he had a limp to an aid station. So he was already 2 hours off the lead. So then he just decided he was just going to finish the race. But yeah, he was one of the only ones that actually stopped, or he didn't stop. He just, as he was rolling by, he's like, "Hey, do you have everything you need?" And of course I was like, "Yeah, I got everything. I'll see you guys later." But out of the, I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 people that passed me while I was pulling my chain out from my bottom bracket for the third time, was asking. He would ask me every single time, so I thought that was cool. But yeah, I do agree with you, Serena, that it felt very cutthroat this year in a lot of ways. I don't know, Danny, how did it go with when you had your mechanical?
Yeah, so I mean, several people just as they went by, they asked if I was okay, but yeah, nobody voluntarily pulled over. I wouldn't expect them to at the 200 level race, but nobody pulled over. I had a couple of people ask if I had everything, but at that point, by the time I answer them, they're already another stretch down the road, so I don't know if they would have stopped or not, but yeah, I mean, it's like I said earlier, I think this race, as we kind of rolled out in the 200, I think, we felt it in the group too. Like it was, people were working, they weren't talking at all. But the vibe was not what I experienced in last year's 200 or even the 100 the year before that.
Yeah.
So I just think, like I said, I get the sense people are just taking themselves a little too seriously instead of just enjoying the day. So.
Yep.
But good stuff. All right.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Serena, I think you have other stuff to get to, right? So unless is there anything
sitting in my car at a baseball game? So I should go make sure my child actually made it into the dugout.
Okay. Well, it was great talking to you. Thank you.
I'm just so proud of you too.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We're proud of you too. You're basically carrying all the SufferSooner squad podiums this year. So
I know we gotta start pulling our weight.
We gotta start pulling our weight. Otherwise, you're gonna drop us for some other team.
Only race who shows up. You can only race who shows up, and I just don't know how many women are quite as crazy as we are. I think it's more of a male-dominated craziness. So
yeah. But. All right. Well, hopefully your son has some great baseball games, and we will talk to you later.
Yep. Talk soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye. All right. So, that was good. It was good to hear from Serena, even though she's a crazy busy person. I tell you what, with those kids of hers, they got her running around
everywhere all the time.
Yep. So. Well, I mean, let's get into, basically, Serena came down for the day and raced the day and kind of felt the same kind of vibe that we were feeling. That was a little Unbound was the people at Unbound were just, I would say, yeah, I think you're right. They're taking themselves a little too seriously, Mm-hmm. They're not as many jokesters. Like I was trying to tell some jokes to some guys that I was riding with for a little while, and they weren't having it. It was either they didn't like my comedy or they were just not in a place. It's hard to tell because, the race was just so hard.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it too. You just don't know. I mean, you just never know if it's just because everybody else is suffering too. I mean, we kind of get into the breakdown of our effort, and we'll see that our first 40 miles we went faster than we expected to, and I mean, but we were still trying to chat with people and still trying to just kind of get a sense of who's from where and what their goals were. And I get it. Not everybody's there feeling like that they're probably taking the approach, hey, this is a race, not a group ride, and I'm gonna lock in, I'm gonna focus. I get it. I understand why people may take that approach, but I just feel like when you're in a group of, I mean, we had a group of 30 riders there, maybe 40 riders at one time that had a pretty good stretch of riders. Like, guys, you're not always going at your limit, and you can have a little chat with somebody, and nobody just felt like maybe they was nervous for the day, or maybe they was nervous because it was the North Course and they said something wrong. Then the rock gods would throw a tire shooter at them or something. So
slice their sidewall or something.
No, geez, you had to go there, didn't you?
But I think so. Getting away from the race, I think the leading up part to the race, we did volunteering, and oh my gosh, that was by far. I had so much fun. We met some friends of the podcast that we rode with from Wichita. I didn't get to hang out with Giga Chad, But his friends were there, and so they all laughed that I gave him the name of Giga Chad. He's a great guy. He owns the Peddlers in Wichita. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're ever in Wichita, go to the Peddlers and shop there.
Absolutely.
They're a great group of folks. We volunteered with those guys on our first day, and we hung out, talked to all the event people, and just having a great time, just setting up the expo that is Unbound. I mean, it's like a little circus that happens.
It was wild to watch it go from an empty parking lot to just a full on, party. And, it's what it was. It was a great time. I get kind of fixated on some of these little things. Like, I thought it was really cool. Like, we got to help stand up the start finish line and the banners and the all that stuff. And, that gets wheeled into place. I mean, that was really cool. And now you kind of see the pictures of that stuff. Hey, I set that up. Yeah, it's just fun. It's fun to be a part of it at a whole different level and kind of get some of the behind the scenes of everything that goes into it. I mean, a ton of volunteers. I'm sure they always need volunteers. They could probably never have too many. Sometimes it felt like, 6 of us doing a 1-person job, but then, I mean, it was just so much fun and some really good people down there. We met Tasia, who does a lot of the coordination for the volunteer efforts, and just really good people that appreciated our help. They were more than welcoming, and it was just so much fun. I really can't wait to do it again next year. Quite frankly, it makes me just want to, volunteer at more events that I'm not actually racing in. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it was our chance. We got to see a couple of them, like a couple of the pros, come through, and, they all thanked us for volunteering and stuff. And like you said, like, it's just really cool to see basically how the circus is made, like how it's built up. Like, it comes from there's an empty parking lot, and then the next thing you know, it's this full on expo with, the height of gravel stuff, everything gravel. I think we walked the expo like 2 or 3 times,
at least,
at
at least.
So, I mean, it was, and each time we went, we'd see a new pro, and we would see some new piece of gear that was coming out. Like, it was just wild. So I think that's the part that I really love about Unbound. The racing part, it's a race. I get it. But the fact that it's one of the biggest, it's becoming an international race now. I mean, you have Matthew Mahorich, who from he's Belgium, right?
Yep. And races for Bahrain Victorious, and
he brought some of his teammates to come and try to dethrone Keegan, and you have all these ex-World Tour pros that were coming in to I mean, you would look on a corner. I mean, we rode past Ted King, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was Ted King.
That's right. I had to do a double take. I wasn't sure it was him.
We were double take. I was like, wait a minute, I know who that guy is.
And then we also saw who did we see in the crosswalk that you pointed out?
Gosh. Oh man, he won too. I'll think of it here. But we saw Dylan Johnson in
we saw Keegan, right? Keegan,
and we saw Keegan riding, and we saw Ian Boswell. That's who we saw in the crosswell.
Yeah.
And then who else? And then we were just doing our normal, volunteering stuff. And then here comes Jeremiah Bishop, who me and you both really freaking love.
Yeah.
And he's got us on Instagram Live. So
cheese balls on Instagram Live. So if you want to,
if you ever want to see a couple of goofy goobers, you go to Instagram Live and you look that up. It's great.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Like, it's one of those chances that, these having all these world tour or professional athletes all in one spot, like, it's just,
it's pretty wild.
it's definitely wild, and that's the part that I love about Unbound.
You know,
I
one
think.
of the things that I caught myself doing while we were volunteering, you know, you're right there at Unbound headquarters, and when you go in there, it's, you know, it's a, when we went in, it was a full warehouse, and when we left, when, you know, we were done with our volunteering, it's almost empty because everything's getting pulled out of there. But they've got a lot of stuff on the shelves from like past, you know, before it was Unbound, it was DK, and there's a lot of really cool old pictures on the walls too, and it's like, I don't I think part of the thing with Unbound growing and kind of getting the corporate image that it has right now, I think a lot of people forget and maybe don't even know where it came from, and like how this whole race started. And I think maybe that's something we can spend a little time on, maybe leading up to Unbound next year. Maybe we'll kind of dig into some of that. But it's really cool to see some of the pictures of the older racers that before there were pros showing up every year. It was just a bunch of guys showing up, and, you know, males and
Yeah,
females
showing up in a hotel parking lot.
yeah, just to go race it. And, you know, nobody, and I think that's kind of what Serena was talking about earlier. It's like, I mean, I'm sure those guys were racing it and they were somewhat serious, but, you know, we talked to a few guys while we were down there this last weekend. They were like, yeah, you know, back in the day, it really wasn't a race. I mean, yeah, it was a race, but like it was a race of attrition because you just knew how brutal the day was going to be, you know, and
Yeah.
everybody was just trying to finish it. They weren't trying to race it. It wasn't until the pro started showing up, or the former pro started showing up, and all of a sudden it turned into a race, which is fine. But I just think that just some of the history of it, I think if Lifetime wanted to really help its image in this whole spirit of gravel nonsense that gets talked about a lot, I think if they told a little bit more about the history of it and just make sure they stay true to the roots, I think that would be really good. Because I think when, you know, we talked about some of this too with all the mud, you know, commentary after last year, it was pretty clear this year they decided, you know what, we're going to double down on it. And, you know, you didn't like the mud, that's fine. We're just going to make it the hardest course we can in the north, and then let's see what happens. And it turned out to be one of the fastest races of all time. So it's just crazy, sort of the evolution of what's happened here in the with the race. But yeah, that was one of the coolest things I think for me personally, just to kind of see the pictures on the wall and things like that. It's just an opportunity you don't get otherwise, you know. But just volunteer.
Yeah. Anytime you can spend some extra time down there. And then another thing we did was we stayed in the dorms. Now, I would say that the beds are not as comfy as they advertise.
They're a little rough.
And they're a little rough. So if you can mitigate that with, you know, I don't know, some way that maybe bring your thickest, happiest sleeping bag or something like that, and, you know, kind of figure something else out and make those dorm mattresses a little bit more comfier so you can get better sleep. But other than that, it was really cool because, you know, there's no TVs in the dorm rooms. Like there's a common area and stuff like that. So it kind of forced us all to kind of be in the common area and see people. And then we would go and eat, you know, at the dining hall with everybody. So then you got to be with more of like, you know, there was, you know, a couple of people doing the 100, and there was a father and son that came to do the 50, and, you know, and all this other stuff, but they stayed and did, you know, some volunteering, but they also, you know, were there for the week, you know, to leading up so that they could, you know, do the whole spectacle of Unbound. And I think that was really cool, just seeing everybody, you know, in the dorms. Like it was just kind of like, yeah, like it forced you to be more social too.
Exactly.
Which was cool.
Yep.
So
it's great time for sure. So if you get a chance to volunteer down there, I would highly recommend it. There's all kinds of different jobs that you can do some that require physical, and then others that you can just kind of hang out and like stuff packets and things like that. That's less physical, and just a great time. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, race day. What was the goal, Danny?
Yeah. So, you know, and Serena mentioned it earlier. I mean, my lead up to Unbound with Humphreys a few weeks ago and the heat disaster that happened there, like I wasn't really sure what my goal was going to be. I mean, all along, starting with last year, the goal was to come out and beat the sun. And, you know, when we put the race plan together and we were looking at all the numbers and putting the nutrition plan together and everything, it's like, hey, I think there's a real shot, but it's got to be a pretty clean day, right? So that was kind of the way it was setting up, and on on paper, I think there was a really, really good chance to beat the sun. So that's what the goal was, is like beat the sun and kind of forget about the things that happen leading up, just trust the training and trust all the work that's been put in. Yeah, so that was it. Beat the sun. I really didn't find myself racing against other riders. And maybe that goes back to the whole thing about the vibe, is I wonder if people feel like they're racing the other riders. Like, I think because of the size of Unbound, you're not, unless you're truly competing for the podium, you're kind of just racing the clock. I don't see myself racing other riders. I feel like
there's no reason for me to race the 295th rider so that I can get 294th.
Right.
There's not much to be gained from that.
That's right.
So I don't know. Maybe that's what they, were thinking, or, some of these, they're, I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of people that I just don't know if they know how to ride in a group, or they don't do enough group rides, or they don't feel comfortable doing that, or they're just kind of like, hey, 200 is a long day. So maybe they were just like, my plan is to ride at this average watts no matter what. So, if I'm in a group, I can't do that because I'll, be going a little too high in the beginning, or,
Sure.
To stay with the group and stuff. So,
yeah. So how about you? What was your goal for the day?
My goal is the same as yours, is beat the sun. Yeah. It was the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was, that was the whole goal leading into this. I was coming off of that Humphreys podium finish high. And, I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, I think I have a really good shot at beating the sun. So I decided, that's the eggs. That's what the main goal was. And until something happened, or that would either the weather or mechanical derailed that goal, that was always the goal.
Yep.
So
awesome.
All right. So then
the race starts.
Then the race starts. So I want to think of, like, I want to say each section has a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you have, you have your start to water 1, and then water 1 to aid 1, and then water 2 to aid 2, and then aid 2 to the finish.
Yep.
So what do you think, what did you feel that the theme was for the start to water 1?
So I think, when we looked at the route beforehand, we knew that this section would be relatively easier than the others.
I think we came up with like 44 vertical feet per mile.
Yeah. And we also knew that there would be a likelihood of a very light wind, out of the south, possibly, might switch around to the north, but it was going to be a light wind regardless. So it wasn't really going to be a factor. And we also knew race morning and the night before, we knew it was going to be cool. So, so I think, it changed our approach a little bit. At least it changed my approach a little bit in terms of the water strategy. The night before,
Mm-hmm.
I made a little change in terms of I wasn't going to carry a pack out of the gate and just trust the water bottles. And so I mean, the one thing that probably surprised me the most was how fast it was. I mean, I know we were in a pretty quick group, but that was a fast 40 miles.
I want to say it felt like we were all racing to the first aid station.
Yeah.
Basically to water, like me and you pulled over for water at water 1, but most of the group just basically just blew right past us because it was a full on race. I think we had the same conversation, and I decided not to wear a pack for the first part of the race. And thinking about it now, like, would I have changed? Maybe, because then I could have blown through that water stop and then stayed with the bigger group. But I think I would have ended up losing them anyways, because I just can't climb as fast as those guys. They just would just pull away on the climbs, and I would have to reel them back in on the flats. So it was a full on race. I think our average pace for that first 40 miles was, it took us 2 hours to go 40 miles. So we were going 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. When I go back and look at my stats, just under 19 miles an hour average speed. And my intensity factor was 0.91 for that 2 hours.
Yeah.
So to put that in context, when we rode Le Grind day 2, the 65 mile stage race, I think 0.91 was my intensity factor there as well. But in this section here, I set a PR for highest power output over 90 minutes in this block.
Yeah.
That's a lot when you know you're going to be out there for at least 13 hours.
This is 40 miles, 2 hours into a race. And if you do an intensity factor of 0.1 or 1.0, that's basically your FTP for an hour. So that's like, it shouldn't be
max effort for 1 hour.
Yeah. It's as hard as you can go. I had 0.81 on that first, let me see here. No, I had 0.88 on that first section because there was a couple times, to get the group started, there was a lot of guys, and I don't mean to sound rude or anything to these guys, but a lot of people that were punching above their weight class. Absolutely. That were in groups that were very nervous. I saw a group, a guy and a girl on a tandem go down. I saw one guy just skid out in the corner and just belly slide into the cornfield. So there was that guy that was just stopped pedaling in the middle of the group.
Right.
So it's just it was very hectic for the first 20 miles. And then definitely it was a full on race for the next 20 miles until that first water stop.
I think part of that is the race, because the profile was a very slight uphill, but the profile didn't have a lot of punchy features, so the group never really got to settle out. You know what I mean? Like normally in a more typical race course, in that first few 20 miles or so, you're going to get some climbing or something that will sort of break the group up, and then it sort of sifts all that out. But in this case, it really didn't happen. You just had a full-on straight road for several miles, and then to your point, like the folks that couldn't really bike handle very well, and they were in a group they had no business being in, but because they could just catch a draft and sort of sit on a wheel, they didn't really ever get dropped. And then next thing you know, they're going down because they can't handle the bike handling, or whatever the case may be. So, but that's okay. I mean, it turned out okay. It was good because he banked a little bit of time there, right? So that's a good thing. We went faster than our models, even. Like we have our spreadsheets and everything. We went faster than the fastest time.
Then we thought. We were like, we didn't think we were going to be going that fast. Like we're going to have to readjust the models for next year.
No kidding. But no, it was a great time. That first 40 miles was beautiful, and perfect weather, by the way. Beautiful.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was nice and cool, and it was we were just flying. So then we get into, I would say, the next section from Water 1 to Aid 1. There is a few sections of minimum maintenance roads. Mm-hmm. There was what is it called? Divide Road, which is one of the first kind of big sections. Mm-hmm. That was a little crazy. I basically went into that ahead of you, Danny, and then I just sent it, and then from there, that was basically we got through Divide Road, and then we got onto a nice road, and then we went into another minimum maintenance road, and then we got onto the nice road again, and then it was another minimum maintenance road, and then we got on a nice road, and then we were at Alma, and that's where the first checkpoint is. So when I went through Divide Road, it's basically, I couldn't look around. And so I assumed Danny was right behind me. When I got to the nice road, I looked around and I figured, he probably just tried to take a safer line, and he's going to be working his way back to me. So I just kept pressing on. The goal was, just keep. This is the hard section for me, because this section to Alma to Council Grove is all, like, I would say, called the death by 1,000 cuts section, because it's up, down, these climbs, and then descents and climbs and descents. So I figured Danny would probably end up catching me eventually, but.
Well, you were wrong. But you're right. I mean, in a normal, like, and this is just how we ride. I mean, this happens a lot just on our training rides. I mean, one of us will drop back and then, kind of a flat will come up or a little punchy climb, and then we'll catch up to the other one. And it just kind of just happens that way. So yeah, normal. And again, this is a race. So we always talk about this beforehand, like, don't wait up for the other one. Just go do your race and enjoy it. And so somewhere in Divide Road, about 3/4 of the way through Divide Road, and Divide Road, by the way, is like notorious in Unbound history for being a technical and challenging section. And I didn't really find it too technical. I mean, I don't think it was terribly. I mean, it was not an easy road, but it was not terrible or super challenging. But there was a guy in front of me about 3/4 of the way in Divide Road, and he was playing it safe. I'll just say it that way. A little safer than I wanted to play it, because I needed to stay with the group. So Travis, I was trying to stay with your group. I saw you about 4 riders up in front of me. So I found a spot where I could make a line change, and I picked it out about, I don't know, probably about 15, 20 yards up the road. I saw a good spot. So I made the line change, and I just as I was doing it, I saw a rock that was sticking out, and I thought I missed it. So I thought I was in good shape. Turns out it was not in good shape. That rock put a nick in my sidewall, and the nick was probably about an inch long, not terrible. But it was just deep enough that I was losing air, and I eventually felt the rim bottom out, so I had to pull over, and so I had a flat, and I plugged it. I have those Stan's darts, which typically do a great job of even sidewall repairs, and plugged it, put some CO2 in it, the sealant sealed it up, thought it was in good shape, had enough air in it, so I just pushed on. And about 7 miles later, after we got off Divide Road, you make a couple of turns, and we got another section. There's a little schoolhouse, and I felt my bottom wheels right after a timing mat. I felt my bottom wheel kind of bottom out again, and that's when I knew it flatted a second time. And this time I had to put a tube in, because number one, I was out of CO2s. I had one more CO2, so I used that to inflate the tube. It wasn't enough. I had to actually use the hand pump as well. But all in all, I lost like 30 minutes of time messing around with a sidewall. And so at that point, I think, Travis, I looked on the Garmin, I think you were about 5 to 6 miles up the road, maybe 7 miles up the road on me.
Yep.
And so from that point, I knew what I had to do. Like, I just had to work to get back, and I felt like Beat the Sun is still very attainable. So I felt like, okay, I mean, I had about 300 riders past me in that time. I go back and look at the time sheets, and 300 riders passed me while I was changing a tube.
Yeah, you can see where it happened at miles. The timing mat at 62.9.
Yep.
You were going into it as, and let's say 400th place.
Yep.
And then when you left that, it was 698th.
Yeah, and the first flat was before that. So the first flat was between 40.5 and 52.3, because coming into 40.5, I was in 277th place. So top 25% basically.
Yeah.
And then I had the first flat, so I lost about 130 spots. And then I had the second flat, I lost another 300 spots. So with those two flats, I lost almost 500 positions, almost half the field passed me.
Yeah, that's insane, man.
So now, and could I have changed the tire changed the tube out faster? There's a lot of things that I kind of go back and say, well, could I? But at the end of the day, I mean, I think I did the right things for the situation. I'm not going to second guess it, but I would say that losing 500 positions, I think what that really means is I don't have a group I can work with anymore. And so I found myself from that point on group hopping, trying to skip up to the next group, constantly just putting efforts in. And we'll talk a bit more in the other sections, but I made it to that first aid station, had to put some air in the tire at that aid station to kind of level things out, make sure my pressures were right. But thank goodness, man, I just fast forward on that, the tube held the rest of the race. And I mean, there were some sections I just said, I'm going to send it and hope for the best. And man, those Pathfinders, and again, we're not sponsored by anybody, but those Pathfinders are really, really good with just protecting the rim and the tubes. That didn't nothing busted through. So So yeah, so I got dropped. I mean, it really is just bad luck. Probably, could I have just stayed behind the guy? I mean, there's a lot of maybes, possibly could haves, but I made the call I made, and I think it was the right call. I just got a little bit of bad luck, and that's what happened. So yeah, I lost 30 minutes and found myself about 7 miles behind the group that you were with, Travis. I didn't know how much longer I was going to hang with them anyway, but it turned out to be a really, really frustrating section because of that, and found myself working from behind the rest of the day.
Yeah. So then, we get to that aid station. I look and I was like, oh, I saw that you were, 7 miles behind or 5 miles behind me. And I was like, oh, he probably had a mechanical, but he's rolling now. So I'm like, he should be, he'll be coming through. I always expected you to just become rolling up behind me eventually. Yeah.
It usually goes something like I roll up behind you, like, how's it going?
Yeah. So it's, I never count Danny out, and I know he doesn't count me out especially when stuff like this happens. If there's a way to drive ourselves back to the pointing of the race, we'll make it happen. So I just was like, I understood that this section was going to be, was going to be the hardest part for me, just because of the elevation and all that stuff. It's
you're talking about aid 1 to water 2 now.
Yeah, aid 1 to water 2. Yeah. So I was just like, I can't wait, even though I would love to, but I was like, I just need to keep pressing on. And so then the about mile 80, I would say, just after that mile 82 timing mat, I had what would be one of 4 drop chains, where it doesn't drop to the outside, which is easy to fix. It drops to the inside and then wedges itself to my bottom bracket shell. And so I have to pull. I have to basically, right after like mile 80 something, I flip the bike over. I have to pull out all my water bottles, take off my vest, because it's just hot, and then I have to work my chain around the chain rings and the bottom bracket so I can pull the chain out. So I didn't have to take it off the first time. And then I was like, that was weird. And then about 10 miles down the road, it happens again. And I'm like, this time I'm just like, this is crazy. This never happens to me. Like, my bike was in
Travis, we've ridden all year together. I don't remember your chain ever dropping all year.
Yeah. So I was just like, I was just thinking, well, maybe I'm just shifting in a bad spot and it's really bumpy, and it's just, maybe I'm doing something different, and I'm just not paying attention. And so I, basically after the second time, it really wrapped itself around the bottom bracket. So I had to take the chain apart. And then I fixed it, pulled it back together, and I said, if it happens again, if it happens one more time, I need to really look at what's going on. Sure enough, 10 miles down the road, mile 90, it's wrapped around the bottom bracket again. And I'm like, what the heck? And we were just getting out of, so I think there's the Little Egypt section.
Well, Little Egypt is like mile 101 or something like that.
Yeah. So we were just getting to the Little Egypt section, and that was right. You were
in that Bolland area.
Yeah. And so I was just like, what the heck? So I stopped, flipped the bike over, pulled my water. I was like, okay, I ate a goo right before. And I was just like, okay, take a minute, get your tool out, and let's check, the front ring bolts. Let's check let's check everything. I look at the rear derailleur, and I'm like, I don't remember that bolt being or that little thing sticking out as much as it has. Sure enough, it was basically hanging on by a thread. I was like one thread away from launching my rear derailleur into probably my cassette and then ending my day.
Yeah.
So I tightened that all up. And of course, I was messing with the front derailleur, first to try to get it to not stop, drop to the inside. And by doing that, I also created a perfect storm of where it could probably still drop to the inside, which it eventually did. Basically, later in the race, it did it to me, and I had to break the chain and pull it all through the bottom bracket. But no, I mean, but once I found that that was the issue, it was just like, okay, now I have to be very diligent with my shifting. I can't shift middle of the cog and go to the big ring. I have to go basically almost all the way down to the like hardest 2 cogs and then shift to the big ring.
Yeah.
So, so that was my little mechanical, and that was a pain. I definitely lost, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes each time I had to do that, because you can't just rip your chain out of your bottom bracket and chain rings, because one, if you bend your chain, then guess what? Your whole day's over.
Yep.
If you break it, or, or do any of this other stuff, like it's just not going to work right. And you really need it to work right.
Yeah. So I think that whole section, so I mean, the mechanicals, thank goodness you caught the rear derailleur, because that definitely would have ended the day. And it also kind of gives you a little peace of mind, because now you know what was causing it. So you fix it, it's done. So, but I think just as far as the course itself goes, there were a couple of interesting things in that part of the course that I think presented some challenges. You had, Volland, which has a climb, but there's also there was that creek, right? And wasn't there a creek in Volland?
There was it was a jump the creek into a bed of boulders.
That's a nice feature. I mean, nothing like taking your drop bar bike and feeling like you're full suspension. But I mean, there were some people who went down through there, and it definitely required some quick skills. And if there's one thing you have at mile 100 is you don't have quick skills, you have slow skills.
Yeah, you're basically, I try to, like, especially, training for these events and stuff. I really, I've explained it to my kids before. They're like, well, how do you deal with these situations? And it's basically whatever decision my mind makes, the first one, that's the one we're going with. And we're going with it 100%. So if my mind says, send it, we're sending it. Like, no matter what, like, we're going to hold on and we're going to do it. If my mind says stop and, reassess, then we're stopping and reassessing. So, I think it's those times when you have that doubt in your head, like, oh, I don't know if I should send this, that's when you're going to get into trouble. So definitely, I'm not saying that, this works for everybody, but for me, I've found that, if I knew that section at Volland, I probably wouldn't have done what I did.
Sure.
So it's kind of like the first time seeing it, you just kind of go, you just react and trust your instincts. Now if I ride it next year and we're going down there, I'll probably do something completely different, because, what I did was, there was a good chance that I was going to flat.
Yeah.
I really thought we were going to flat on that.
Yeah. I did too. I mean, I came through there obviously probably 20 minutes behind you or more, but I thought the same thing. I thought as soon as I saw it, I did the same. I did the exact same thing you did. I just reacted. I tried to bunny hop the big crater that I saw, and I saw what was up in front. I'm like, well, I mean, I got a tube. I guess we're going to find out if this tube can hold. And man, so much relief when I got out of that little boulder section and there was still air in the tires, because I thought for sure it was like double flat.
Same. I was talking to the guy next to me. He's like, oh, if we don't get a flat from this, it's going to be a miracle. And I was like, yeah. Because
there was a lady riding next to me, and actually she was right in front of me as we were going into that section, and I could tell she was nervous anyway. And then when I saw that, I was, because anytime I ride behind somebody I don't know very well, I'm always looking through their feet up in front of them as the best I can. And I saw that little crater and the boulders, and I was like, oh no. And so I got out, thankfully I got out a little, like a bike width around her, and took a slightly different line. And thank goodness I did, because she grabbed a handful of brakes, and I don't know how she had enough speed to carry the whole, because I thought for sure she was like going to go head over the handlebars quick, because she just grabbed a handful of brakes. And she caught up to me a little bit later on. And she's like, I just didn't know what to do. I panicked. I'm like, that's the last thing you can do out here is panic. You do not want to be panicking out here. Like, you just got to trust the instinct and roll with it. And if it's the wrong choice, it's the wrong choice. But anyway, so yeah, so you got to do that, and then you got to the infamous Little Egypt section, and I'll tell you, there was a lot of hype about Little Egypt kind of coming into it, and it is a iconic section. You hear about it all the time when you hear about the North Route. But I'll tell you, I didn't find it terribly technical. Once again, it was challenging, but the challenging part was just climbing out of that there were a couple of decent little climbs out of there, but some little loose sections. But I didn't find it terribly technical or super challenging. It was just hard. I mean, it's just hard because the route's hard,
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, it could have been harder, especially if it was muddier. But from what I remember, it was just, more of like, okay, pick the right line, boulders over here, some shelves, rock shelves here, don't swap lines, just keep rolling with it, a little rutted out here and there, and then boom, you were on the climb.
That's right.
So it rolled pretty fast. So yeah, other than that, once I had all those mechanicals and I got it figured out, it was pretty smooth sailing all the way to Council Grove. It was just, you're just putting in a lot of work. It was just hot. It was just starting to get hot.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of, for those two sections we just covered, from water 1 to aid 1 to water 2, like my intensity factor went to like 0.8 and then down to 0.74. So, I mean, that's basically a really good, low tempo, very good endurance pace for me. And I mean, so I felt like I was working to get back into the groups, but I just felt like the effort was there. It was challenging, but the effort was there, and I thought I was making progress. And when I go back and look at the timesheet results, like for those sections, I mean, I personally clawed back almost 200 spots, those two sections. So, and I knew I was passing people, so I knew I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't sure. I stopped checking to see where you were, Travis, because I knew you were up the road, and I just felt like I'll see you. If I see you, I'll see you. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep working, because I just needed to maintain a consistent pace that I knew I could hold, and just keep working where I could. And so yeah. So at that point, I think getting through those two sections felt like what a mental relief that was.
Yeah, I definitely say that those two sections were the meat and potatoes of this whole route. And my intensity factor back down, I went from 0.78 on the first Alma to Alta Vista, and then I went to 0.74. I was just being more cautious than really anything. I didn't want to have any more mechanicals. I wanted to make it through this section relatively unscathed physically. Like I didn't want to bury myself too deep, because once you get to Council Grove, you still have 50 something miles left. Like it's not over.
It's not easy.
Yeah. So
well, so then the other thing about that is you're going into Council Grove, you've got that Q Avenue ditch that we pre-rode, and then you've got the R Avenue rollers that's when the heat of the day, you could tell, was starting to pick up. There's that R Avenue. By the time I got to that third roller, I could tell the heat was kicking up, but I also knew the stop was close, with Council Grove being just a few miles away. So, I think that was pretty interesting there. So,
yeah, that's when I started seeing people taking ditch naps, hiding out in the shades. They basically, cooked themselves. That was the first sign that people were struggling, for sure.
Yeah.
Going into Council Grove.
Yeah. That section, my intensity factor dropped down to 0.67. So again, that's an endurance level, but when I look at my temperature, my Garmin was reporting 90 degrees, and with a max temperature of 100. So now that's going to pick up a little bit of the heat off the gravel and all of that, but the sun was starting to beat down, and those exposed sections, it just took it out of you. So you're right. I mean, a lot of ditch naps, and this was a lot harder than it looked on paper. There's no doubt about that. So
yeah. All right, and then we got aid 2.
Aid
to the finish.
Aid 2 to the finish. So the pressure's on. So Travis, kind of talk us through how aid 2 to the finish went for you, and then I'll kind of sum up how my finish took shape.
So as I was rolling into Council Grove, I was starting to feel a little nauseous. So I knew the heat was playing a factor on me, but I also knew, all right, now I only have, 100 miles left or so. Or not 100 miles. What do we got? 50 miles left.
Yeah,
Sorry.
53 miles left. It might have felt like 100, and I
Felt like
guarantee
100. It
felt
could have
like
easily been 100.
That's right.
So what I did was I decided at Council Grove to take my time, drink some straight water, and dump some water on myself to help cool me. And then that really helped. And I drank a Coke and a Red Bull, and I repacked my stuff, and I was off, and I was like, okay, only, I was just thinking only like 50 miles, we got to go. So I roll out of there, and I'm living off the Coca-Cola, Red Bull, fructose wave. And I was like, I'm going to ride this for as long as I can.
I wonder why your gut was upset. My goodness. Yeah. You got it all.
I was like, well, it's either going to get worse or get better. It has. And so that was my thinking. And basically it held me to, until we got to the lake and the lake climb. And so we climbed that Koala Lake climb. Luckily there was some kids down there just handing out water, cold water, and I snagged one from them, and I was, my stomach was just getting increasingly just more and more nauseous, and so I was like, let me just drink this water. So I drank, I don't know, probably half of that bottle, and I dumped the rest on me, and I finished that climb, and man, I felt a lot better. And I was like, okay, so I need to ditch one of these nutrition bottles and get straight water. So basically I was like, okay, I'll do that as soon as I can. And we went into Americus, and they had the leftover, I think this was the 100 water stop. Or something. I saw that, and I basically just went off the road into the park, rode right up to the water thing, dumped out my nutrition, and just added a full bottle. I think, full bottle of just straight water. And I chugged like at least half of that liter bottle. And then I just, basically went into the finish line. I was like, this, I just keep pedaling. There was a group of 3 guys that were just railing it. And I was just holding on to those guys for dear life. And I didn't even take a pull because I was just maxed out. Sure. And, one of the guys was actually bigger than me. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like to be, to be behind me. This is nice. No wonder everybody likes it. That's So I he attacked the group right before the finish line hill, that Highland Hill, whatever it is. And he attacked the group, and basically I was like, I'm not attacking you guys. You guys pulled me to the finish. Like, I'm like, go on, get up the road. And so they were like appreciative and stuff. And then we just rolled across the line, and that was it. And so
rolled across the line, beating the sun.
Nice. 13 hours and 36 minutes.
Nice. Yeah.
So I did beat the sun.
Yes.
I had almost an hour to spare.
Yeah. That was that's what it's all about, man. I mean, again, you weren't really necessarily, you want to finish as high in the standings as you can, but there was one goal for the race, and you freaking went out and got it. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I looked at my, mechanicals and stuff. If I didn't have all those, I could have, probably been sub 13, but still I was super stoked just to be done. I was more happy just to be done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially when, that 53-mile stretch, again, on paper, it didn't look like it was going to be terrible, but the wind started to pick up there, and that turned what should have been a fairly straightforward effort into, probably a bit more work than it should have been. And it sounds like you had a pretty good group to work with. So that's awesome. So, great job to get it in. That's awesome. So,
so from basically Aid 2 to Americus, where that water station was, it was 0.77 intensity factor.
Okay. So
then from the water station to the finish was 0.86.
Nice.
So I was everything I could to just stay with that group. I did not want to lose them, because I knew if I lost them, I would just noodle back to the line. And I was like, I kept telling myself, I was like, I don't want to be out here any longer than I have to be. So let's just go. Let's just
get done with this.
Yeah, let's just suffer and just get this done.
Or as some would say, suffer sooner.
Exactly. Suffer so I can end this sooner. So
yeah. So I mean, similar, right? Similar for me. So Council Grove, I got out of Council Grove. It was relatively, I mean, it was kind of a slight uphill, but it was relatively smooth road coming out of Council Grove. And then you had a couple of little climbs. But coming out, I had a train of people behind me because apparently I was putting out pretty good power because I was in Council Grove for maybe 5 minutes tops. Enough time. I slammed a Coke. I asked one of the volunteers to grab me a PB&J. They did that, swapped the bottle, swapped the pack, and was gone. And so going out of there, I was like, because I knew. Okay, so we said if we were through Council Grove by what did we say, 4 o'clock? I think it was.
Yeah, 4 o'clock.
Yeah, we had a really good chance to beat the sun. I think I was in Council Grove. If I remember right, it was at 4:50. So I was just, as best I could in the state of mind I was in. I was trying to do the math, and I was like, okay, if I could just average 15 miles an hour to get back, I should be okay. But as I said, it's still a little punchy. There's still some climbing to do. You still got to get out of the sort of open range kind of area. And that, so there was, for what was it, about 20 to 30 miles or so, you still had some of this punchy climbing before it really flattened out.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was doing the best I could through there. My intensity factor up until Americas was still at like 0.69, so not much higher than it was coming into Council Grove. And I think a lot of that was the heat was still, very much a factor. And some of those climbs, it was just trying to survive through it. I got to Americas. I saw the water stop that you're talking about. I did not stop there. I had plenty of nutrition, and I was like, I didn't have time. I knew I had to average at that point because it was so slow from Council Grove, kind of getting to that punchy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't hitting the average I needed, so I just didn't have a chance to stop. So from Americas into Emporia, my intensity factor went back up to 0.78. I just put in an hour-long effort to get the last 15 miles done, 15.2 miles roughly. Put in that 0.78 intensity factor. And then I think
didn't you get a PR coming up that Highland Hill too?
I was pretty close. So yeah, when I got to Highland Hill, so for the last 20 minutes of the race, my intensity factor, I'm sorry, yeah. So for the last 20 minutes of the race, my intensity factor was like 0.93. And then for the last, but hang on, it gets better. For the last 10 minutes of the race, my intensity factor was 1.07 for the last 10 minutes of the race. Right.
And you were just railing everything.
Why would I rail like that? Because I'm looking at the clock and I see how much time is left. And I'm like, I think I have a chance. That's all I'm telling myself is I have a chance.
Yeah.
So I get you get through the tunnel, right? That you make the left turn to get onto Highland, and I see the hill, and we just pre-rode that the day before, right? So I set a PR the day before, not on purpose. It was just because the only other time I did it was Unbound 100.
Yeah.
And so that was a few years ago. And so the PR was not hard to get, but that was on Friday on Fresh Legs. This was 200 miles into the race. I put I think like a 400 or 500 watt average effort up that hill. And I missed my PR by like 2 seconds, I think. So it wasn't much, but I didn't quite PR it. I almost PR'd it. But in any case, I got to the top of that hill, and the crowd, I could hear the crowd cheering, and I heard somebody, I don't know who it was. Somebody, when I made that left turn to get onto Commercial, said, "You could beat the sun, go beat the sun." And I was like, holy crap, I think I got a chance to do it. So it was a dead on sprint down Commercial, and as fast as I possibly could. Travis, yours a 1.68 intensity factor for the for the last minute and a half.
Yeah, you were just absolutely railing it.
Everything for a half mile, I was putting out everything I could get through the legs, and I I think I went so fast. Like there were no pictures of me. Seriously, there was no pictures of me crossing the finish line.
No.
And I even had to reach out to the marathon photo people. Like they said, no, we don't have your picture. I'm like, I don't know how you don't have the picture. So I crossed the finish line, and only to like, as I'm dying, trying to breathe through every possible orifice you can find, I found out I missed the cutoff, the 8:45 cutoff. By the clock time, I missed it by 44 seconds.
Yeah.
It was just brutal. But I was just too spent to even like emotionally care. I mean, obviously I cared, but like, it was just like, I gave everything I had. So I couldn't have given anything else to make that happen. Now, could I have done things earlier throughout the day? Sure. There's always a way you can find a minute or two of savings somewhere.
Yep.
Even with the mechanicals, of course. But in the end, it's like, I know, I mean, just as I've combed through the data, like I know I gave everything I could over the full totality of the day. There's just no way it would have, I couldn't have given anything else. Could I have done things differently? Possibly, but I gave every bit of effort and came up a little short. So I got something to race for next year for sure. But yeah, 44 seconds. I was now it's actually eaten at me more over the last couple of days than it did right when it happened. So
yeah, I got video of you crossing the finish line, and you just looked like death. Like I panned away and was like, "Are you okay? Like, do I need to like get somebody?" Like, because you looked like you were about to just heave right there on the ground. Because
well, much like you, I was struggling with the heat, and the nutrition was like, the gut was not great. But I saw that video and I saw the look in my eyes, and I'm like, I could see why you say that, because it was right there. But it was just like anything else. Like I just needed a minute to just
oh yeah, you just rode your eyeballs out, and
literally.
and just you need a minute to get some blood back to your brain, because you can't even process where you are right now.
No, yeah. It was brutal. But hey, I tell you what, man, I think that clearly that was the hardest event of any kind I've ever done. Like it's far, far more difficult than Ironman. I was just talking to a buddy of mine earlier today about this too, that, we talked about this all the time, Travis. Like Ironman, you get 3 sports, so you kind of get a little break in terms of like, but you're doing the same thing for 14 hours here, 13, 14 hours, whatever it is. And it's so hard to just stay focused. And the mental side of this really harder than the physical side. And that's so hard to explain. It was like, oh my gosh, how can you ride your bike for 14? It's not the physical. It's not the physical side. That's the easy part. It's the mental side.
The wanting to continue to turn the pedals over is the hard part.
That's right. So
yeah.
Well, what a day.
I know. I was completely gutted for you when I saw that you missed it just barely. I was like, oh my gosh, man. But I mean, that's
how it goes.
That's how it goes. I mean, next year, if we do this again, which I'm sure we probably will, it'll just be more on your mind of, okay, I got to keep moving. Got to keep it up, keep it up, because you never know. Like I said, when I got to Americus, I could have easily dilly-dallied for 30 minutes.
Sure. Just
noodling it in. And, it just takes that one little giving into that lapse of judgment. And the next thing you know, you miss your goal. So,
right.
But yeah, it's, it was a monumental effort no matter what, man. It was anytime you complete Unbound, the 100, the 200, the XL, like that in its own right is,
an accomplishment. Yeah.
So.
It's not often not many races out there you say just finishing is the goal, but if there's one part of the hype about Unbound that lives up, like the section that the course, the event actually lives up to the hype, the one thing is the difficulty of the Flint Hills themselves, like just the challenges that the hills provide you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, especially in the north. I mean, the south route, I think it's just a different profile, and it gives you a lot more opportunity to sort of recover and regroup.
Hmm.
The North Course is just so relentless. You don't get that. You just don't get that type of opportunity. And if it's not a physical demand, then it's a mental demand to cascade the downhill, or to navigate the creek and jump in the holes and into boulders. Like, it's all those things. And so yeah, while the goal wasn't met for me personally, I mean, my goodness, I mean, talk about it. Just like Serena said, I just learned so much from the event itself. And we always talk about how the old saying, it doesn't hurt any less, you just get faster. And that's exactly what happened here. I mean, everything
Yeah, it hurt more.
Oh my gosh, didn't it? But
Yeah.
but I mean, we're faster, and both of our power profiles are totally different than they did a year or 2 years ago. And like, you can just see everything paying off. And I think that's really the reward. Like, I would have loved to have met to achieve the same goal you did, Travis. But I think the real reward in a lot of this is like just the physical and the mental growth that you see happening, and carrying that into the next thing. So,
yeah. So let's go over some lessons learned. What do you think you're going to do different in the future, especially on a Unbound type event?
Yeah. Well, I think I got to learn, heat management is something that I think definitely needs some work. And I like, like Dylan Johnson, a few of the other guys out there talked about some of their approaches. And I like the idea of sort of carrying a little extra water that's more disposable and just use it to cool yourself down. So I think that's certainly a part of it. I think the other thing is like, we spent a lot of time leading up to Unbound focusing on our aid station stops and our water stops and being more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I possibly could have been more efficient than I was. I mean, I was 4 or 5 minutes. I look back at the data, 4 to 5 minutes for each stop.
It took me a long time to find them in the data. It was easy for me to find the mechanicals. It was not easy for me to find where the aid stops were.
Yeah. And so the only thing I can think there is like, I could probably get quicker. And maybe if you have a true, like we did the crew for hire, which by the way was phenomenal. And I thought all the volunteers at the aid stations were phenomenal as well. I mean, they did everything.
They held our bikes. They asked us for stuff. They went and got stuff. They pulled our trash. They did all the things. They were
like,
very,
they were like, throw your stuff to the ground. We'll pick it up. Just go. I mean, they were great. So I appreciate them. They're all volunteers and we appreciate that. But I think there's always opportunity to continue trimming time at the aid stations. I kind of joke, like I asked the kid at the Council Grove stop for a PB&J. It was the last, it crossed my mind. It was on my checklist, but it was the last thing. And I'm like, oh, I should have said a Coke and a PB&J, because he had to go back and get the PB&J. It probably took him 30 seconds to go get the PB&J. So it's his fault that I didn't know. No, but I think it's little things like that though. It's like, clean those things up. I mean, those are the things you can control. So the stuff you can't control is the mechanical. Or I mean, Travis, you take care of your bike better than 99.99% of the people.
Yeah, I rebuilt that thing from the ground up, put in new cables, made sure the brakes were perfect. Like it was pristine.
Yes.
Ready to go. Brand new chain, broken in. Yeah. It was it was good to go.
So you can't control that something like that happens. And I can't control that I got a sidewall slice. I mean, heck, Mahorich, the freaking, rainbow champion for gravel, gets a freaking rim. So like, what do you do? Like, this is just the nature of what you're dealing with. So you can't control those things. So I'm not going to pin this on a stop because of a flat, but what could I do? Could I change my approach for how I handle flats in the future? Or just go straight to a tube? Like, maybe there's things I can do like that I can control that I can do next time, so that I have less of a deficit to make up, because something's going to happen out there. You just, it's a matter of when, not if. And so whether it's just, your gut, your, whatever it is, like, just take care of those things that you can control and be as good as you can at it. And the result's the result. So those would be the two big things I think I'm taking away. There's probably going to be some training things that I'll pick up, but I think as far as like events of the day and race day stuff, I think those are the two big ones for me. And I'm otherwise, I couldn't be happier with the overall result and the effort I put out there. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the one of the things I learned, I think, especially going into this race, that helped me out was definitely diluting the mix that I make from 120 grams of carbs to 90 grams of carbs. I do want to take a page from Dylan Johnson and those guys and make a just like a pack of, put my mix in my pack and then just have water on the bike that's more disposable. I think that would have helped alleviate a lot of the gut issues, but it also would have made me end up carrying a little bit more gels and stuff, which is fine. Like, I mean, that's what they're there for. So that would have been okay. Just and trying to, especially if you want to go faster or want to, like, I feel like if I want to go faster in the future, cutting out the water stops, if possible. Like now, if you need them, yes, use them. But as far as, taking time to refill bottles, yes, that's time. And then I always feel that, I always have this saying that, like, once you give in to the first time that you get to stop, it's a lot easier to give in to the second time that you have to stop, and the third and the fourth. So if you make it so that you're mentally, you're not allowed to stop, unless there's an issue, you just keep rolling. And, and my thing of slow miles is better than no miles. You're just always constantly moving forward, because it's really easy for you just to go, oh, I heard a rock zing off my wheel, let me pull over. That my chain made a crunchy sound, I'm going to pull over. My legs just feel tired, I'm going to pull over and start walking this hill. All of this stuff happened to me when I was riding in that Council Grove section, that I just mentally, I wasn't winning the battle of, stay on the bike, keep pedaling, keep moving forward. My mind was like, just get off, take a break. Like, it's okay. Just take a break. So,
which isn't like you, Travis. I mean, that's not normal for you. So we talked a little bit about that after the race, and
yeah,
that just goes back to this race introduces so much for your body and mind to process, and weird things happen. So you just got to be really grounded in your approach. And I mean,
yeah,
kudos
and
to you for just sticking it out and not giving in on it.
Yeah, and you're going to have these ebbs and flows where the mental battle you're losing, but then you're going to start winning, so it, and just kind of knowing where that kind of stuff happens, and how you can kind of fight back from it. For me, usually I start losing the mental battle when my salt is starting to get low. So I started upping my salt intake, and I started, making a concentrated electrolyte mix that I got at the water stop too, and that really helped me turn everything around. So I think just being more flexible, like having my nutrition in the pack, but then also having a couple of bottles that are just water, or I can make them into an electrolyte mix, or just being more flexible with that kind of thing as the heat kind of kicks in, is going to help. And I think the other lesson too is just I really want to look at the way I tapered in for this, because I remember looking at you at before we got separated, I was already starting to feel the length of the day, and we were only 2 or 3 hours in, and that's not like me. So
Might have
I
been
need
the
to
intensity factor that did it.
Yeah, but usually I'm okay with racing stuff. I think going into it, I think that also helped with the mental side of it, that I was just probably a little too cooked.
Yeah,
going into it. So I just need to relook at my tapering, and just make sure that that's probably a little cleaned up for next time.
I think you're onto something with that. I mean, and we talked a little bit before before we started recording about, I felt like maybe coming into this didn't do enough top end work, just even before taper, but even during taper, I think there's some, I think you're onto it. There's some opportunities to adjust how we taper into this and into this type of an event. And, maybe just make sure that all the zones are getting the love as you kind of come into that last 3 or 4 weeks into the event. So
Yeah. So that's probably the two things that I would do is just, really, really focus on my nutrition and heat stuff. And then just really make sure that I, start, refining the taper a little bit more, for this type of event so that I feel fresher and more, mentally like focused, laser focused on the goal.
Yeah.
I did find myself like wandering and just not mentally like I love to ride my bike and I love riding. Sometimes this race felt more of a chore than it should have. Especially where we are riding. I that's the best way I can explain it is that it's so beautiful up there. Like it is, I mean, the views and all of that stuff was amazing. And I did take some time to like kind of take it in, but I found myself more often than not just going like, hey, get back to work. Like, like this is, you're not here to look around. Like it was very negative for a long, long time on this ride.
Yeah. And we don't talk about the pros very often on this podcast, but I think, I kind of go back to Lachlan Morton, who won it. And he talked a lot about his approach, which was, he was going to come out here and have fun. And it's, it's a lot different when you're a world tour, world-class athlete that can say, I'm just going to go have fun. And I'm having fun. And I won one of the biggest races in the world. But I mean, I think what that really says is like, even for folks like us, like you got to find a way to enjoy it to get the best out of your body. Because if you're not mentally in it and wanting to do it, you're not going to get the best effort, and your body's not going to give you everything it's got. And I think you just gotta, like you said, just kind of figure out like, what does it take to make sure that shows up on race day? And so good stuff, man.
So this, I mean, basically signals the start of triathlon season.
No, are you excited?
And the summer season. I am happy. I'm really excited for triathlon season. I mean, talking last week with Katie Renner and stuff, I'm more stoked to do some local triathlons, especially here.
No doubt at all. And when we're not doing triathlon work, which by the way, I mean, a year ago I was not excited to swim. Now I'm chomping at the bit to get back to the pool. I'm really having fun with the swim sessions. Don't know about the running yet. I'm still not sold on the running. I got to talk to Britta about how she gets excited for these ultras.
Yeah, the runner's high. I'm telling you, I've been on a couple runs since we talked to Britta. Still no runner's high. Yeah. Still not finding it.
So got to work on that. But I'll tell you, my favorite part of this is also the fact that I get to get my road bike out a lot more. And I love the gravel bike. I do, but man, sometimes you just want to ride on some smooth road, and I can't go fast and get the TT bike out a couple of times, and it'll be a blast. So really looking forward to it. Looking forward to covering, the local athletes, local tries, and everything that's going on, man. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah. Next week we're talking to, hopefully, Adrian. She leads there's a local, she's a local coach here, but she's also doing this triathlon camp. That's a 6-week camp, and it starts June 9th and it goes every Saturday. And, they're going to, it's a great for beginners, intermediates, even advanced, athletes, because you get access to all of the local coaches that are here. So there's me, there's Josh Wolf, there's Liz from the Reds, there's of course Adrian, there's I forget his name, but he's with Midwest Endurance. So there's a lot of good talent there that'll help out. So if you're interested in that, look at what is it? KC3. They're doing it out of that group, KC3. on Facebook and sign up for it if you're local, for sure. Some good times.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, I mean, it's really for any and all levels. But I think if you've ever thought about doing a triathlon and just don't know where to start, that would be a really good place to start. You'll find a lot of helpful people and very knowledgeable people that just know how to explain the sport to people that are just breaking into it and give you some good pointers. So looking forward to that conversation. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Adrian's a lot of fun. She's done some really tough events too, so I can't wait to hear more about her background. So.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, that's all I got.
All right.
Stuff for complete.
Got it.
Nice. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please, if you like what we are doing here, leave a like, rate us, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. It really helps us grow and finds us more SufferSooner squad mates. And remember, when the finish line feels impossibly far away, we don't give up, we push harder, we dig deeper, and we find solace in the knowledge that our suffering is temporary and our resilience is forever.